Well, hello, and thank you for joining us today and watching our informational video on Monticello School District's upcoming referendum. The purpose of this video is just to have a conversation with Randall Smith, our school board president, and Carol Worth from Wisconsin Public Finance, who has been a part of Monticello referendum since the early 2000s. So we'd just like to record and get some information out there and remind people that the vote is coming up on August 9th, and just share some conversations that we've had in other public meetings, but here it is recorded and able for you to see, and if it should cause any questions in the upcoming weeks, then please, we'll give you some information later to kind of reach back out to us if you have any questions. So, Carol, what can the public expect to see on the ballot coming up?
Okay, well, the ballot is going to be a question that starts with, it's a statutorily prepared question, which means that lawyers wrote it, so it's not user-friendly. So, first of all, it's going to ask you if you will authorize, and that's going to be the key word here, is authorize the school board to exceed the revenue limit. And then they quote a specific statute in the Wisconsin statute, which is section 67-121. And exceeding the revenue limit is exceeding a state law. So that's the reason that the question starts with that. Then it starts to identify dollar amounts and years. So it says by $820,000, and it begins with the 22-23 school year, and that's the year that we are currently in. It started July 1. And it says that you're going to exceed that $820,000 beginning with this school year and on a for recurring purposes. The word recurring means ongoing. And then it says by an additional $280,000 per year, again, starting with this budget year, but only for 4 years. And because it's only for 4 years, and that means it will stop after 4 years, then you will see the words non-recurring purposes. So really that's the only difference, is that the $820,000 begins this year and stays in the revenue limit, and the additional $280,000 is only going to be in the revenue limit for 4 years. So that's what recurring and non-recurring means. Okay, and the combination of the total obviously is shown as $1,000,001, but that again would only be for 4 years. The purposes, okay, recurring and non-recurring purposes is speaking to operational expenses. And the type of operational expenses that the money would be used for would be for your STEM programs, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, and other educational programming. It would be for bus garage upgrades, acquiring district vehicles. It would be for classroom equipment, maintenance and repair projects, and some classroom remodeling. So that is what the ballot language is asking for, is authority. And the question is you answer with a yes or a no. And if you vote yes, that means you are giving the school board authority. And the school board will consider that authority every year in its budget process. So it goes through the budget process, goes through your annual meeting, and if it is determined in that year that the school board needs to use that authority, then it makes that decision every year and is presented to the public again for a vote at the annual meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So before I piggyback a little bit more on some of the things that we need to spend referendum money on, can you help us explain what the 820 and the 200, what the rhyme to the reason was for those amounts?
Sure. The history behind the 820 that we've had over the years.
Yes. Now the 820,000 number comes from, let's go back to the 2014 referendum that was approved here. That was an 8-year referendum. There was $820,000 of tax levy revenue authorized for each year for 8 years. And
that debt is gone now.
And that is gone. That is all paid off. That referendum expired. So that would be referred to as a non-recurring referendum. That's gone. And that means this budget year, you are starting off with $820,000 less. And so therefore, in order to maintain your program services and all the things we talked about, the $820,000 is needed, obviously. I mean, that has been part of your budget for over 8 years. And to all of a sudden lose $820,000 would definitely significantly impact your district's operations. So that's where the 820 is coming from, and that's the reason for the 820 being part of the question as a recurring purpose. Because we look back to your history and we learn from your history, and your history tells us that the 820 has been part of your operating budget. So the 820 now needs to be, let's call it renewed, only through a referendum vote, and that would be then for this budget year.
And that $820,000 is what we call tax neutral.
Tax neutral. It was in your tax bill last December when you received your tax bill. It was in that 820 was part of that tax bill. So with this referendum, that 820 would continue to be in your tax bill. It doesn't raise your taxes, doesn't lower your taxes. It just remains a part of your taxes.
And then there's the other $280,000, and you want to explain kind of what that is going to offset?
Yes. Now, the $280,000, there's a little bit more of a story to that. We talked about this revenue limit law, and the revenue limit is a calculation. I like to explain it as it's being a spreadsheet that the school district receives every year. And the spreadsheet is pretty much pre-populated by Department of Public Instruction. It does require the district to include the September enrollment numbers, and once those numbers are inserted, it runs through the revenue limit worksheet. Okay, so it produces what I like to call line 11. Line 11 says, okay, school district, this is how much revenue you can have. If there are fewer students, the revenue limit will calculate a lower amount of revenue for the district. If you have more students, it will calculate a higher amount of revenue the school district is allowed. So over the years, over the last 8 years, the district has experienced declining enrollment, which many districts in the state have. And the effect of that on the revenue limit is that it lowers and lowers and lowers the amount of revenue that the school district is allowed. So you've actually lost revenue to operate your school district with. So what happens after you calculate that revenue limit is that you get another piece of information excuse me, from the state called state aid. The state aid goes, let's say, on line 12. Okay, now you take line 11, subtract line 12. Line 13, lucky line 13 is your property tax levy number, right? Yep. So a lot of people will think about line 13, your tax levy, and they'll say, well, you know, our taxes went up this year. You're telling me that over the last 8 years with declining enrollment, you've experienced less revenue. But if my taxes have gone up, you must have more money to work with. And that is not the case. State aid is property tax relief. It is not more revenue. The line 11 is your revenue. So we've been losing every year due to declining enrollment more and more of the allowable revenue under line 11. Yep. So now this additional 280 that we are asking for as part of this August referendum is really to kind of restore that revenue. Just say we would like to go back and capture that revenue we've lost over the last 8 years with that 280. So that's why it's called an additional 280. Okay, but it's really the revenue that we've lost over 8 years. So we can kind of go back and maintain our operations the way we would like to, but we've been trying to do it, which obviously the board has had to make other decisions to prioritize expenditures during that time. So we'd like to now go back and use that 280 and restore that revenue to us. So because that 280 was not included in your tax bill, matter of fact, for several years, your tax rate has been dropping.
Right, our mill rate's gone down every year.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's what happens. When your revenue limit is reduced, it actually prohibits you from taxing.
Yeah.
So as you have been losing the ability to tax for it, now we are just coming back and saying we would like to restore it. And it wasn't in your tax bill last December, so we're treating that as an increase in terms of a tax impact.
Right.
And that's the reason for the 4 years, though, because we kicked around a 4-year, a 6-year, and an 8-year like the last one was, and we
Correct.
just felt with the turmoil in financing in the states and that, and politics that
Yes.
keep it simple, keep it small, and see what happens in 4 years again.
And that's what makes it so difficult for school districts to plan and to make those
crystal ball.
decisions. Yeah, is 4 years right? Is 6 years right? Is 8 years right? And you don't know because there are so many things that when we planned the 2014 referendum 8 years ago, we did not think that we were going to lose 280,000
Right.
revenue.
Right, 8 years was too long.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
when we started planning for this referendum, we didn't know the rate at which inflation would happen and everything. So part of this
Absolutely.
operating dollars that we'll be getting from the referendum will be helping to offset that and helping just maintain our budget.
Yep.
You mentioned the tax impact. Let's go to that and talk about that real quick.
Right.
Because the only portion that will have a tax impact is that 280,000. What is that?
That's right. Now, as we said, that 280 was not in your December tax bill. So because it was not, what we're doing is for the tax impact, we're comparing what was in your December of 21 tax bill versus what will be in your December of 22 tax bill. Okay, so that's how we are showing an impact, the comparison of those two. So what we're using is we're taking the $280,000 and we're dividing it into all the valuation of all taxable property in the school district. All your municipalities make up your school district. Okay, so the most recent number we currently have to work with was what's called the 21 equalized valuation of the school district. And that came out last October. And a new valuation will come out this October.
And that's the number we'll work on.
And that's the number that we will know for sure.
But we don't know the number
But
yet.
we don't know the number yet.
Right.
So if there is growth in that number,
Which-
the results are going to be better than what we are talking about now.
Right.
So we took the 280, divided it into 21 equalized valuation, and that produced a tax rate, which is a per thousand number. So the tax rate is $1.12. So just to do easy math and use a property value of 100,000, if you take that $1.12 times 100, you come out with $112, and that would be for every $100,000 worth of property value. Okay, so if the 22 equalized value comes out higher, that there's more valuation, then the 280 would be divided into that number, and then might be 110, 19, 18, we don't know.
Right.
But that's what will then become the actual tax rate that will be applied to your December of 22 tax bills.
And again, that's the only impact for 4 years.
That is the only impact for 4 years, because after 4 years, that is going to expire. It's going to stop.
And it'll be paid for.
It'll be paid for. And the only way that anything more than the 820, which is currently in your tax bill and will continue, is if you would come back to another referendum and go through the same process in terms of saying, what does the revenue limit law now require of districts? Because that changes too.
Right.
One of the other reasons that we talked about declining enrollment, but one of the other things that happened to school districts now in this year too is the fact that on that worksheet that is pre-populated with the state statutes is the fact that in the past the state legislator would have taken action that ties to the state budget and said, okay, in that revenue limit worksheet, you're allowed so many dollars per pupil, okay, as additional revenue. Well, right now that's at zero.
Right. No increase.
No increase. So
For next year either.
for next year either. So that's where that 280 would be coming into play, because you're not going to be able to tax for that. So just as you haven't been able to tax for this decline over 8 years, again, we're talking about that 280 being an increase. And the only reason it's an increase is because we're comparing it to the December 21 tax bill. But it really has been a decline. The tax rate has been
For several
declining
years.
during those several years, right? So all we're doing is kind of going back at one point in time and raising it and comparing it to 1 year. We're not comparing it to all the declines over the years that it has been.
Yeah, it's essentially just taking us back to kind of 2014
When
funding.
we started this,
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
when we started this, it was about the same tax
Exactly.
impact.
Exactly. And that's the part that makes it so difficult for school districts to plan and project, is because 8 years ago, we went through a lot of meetings and workshops to try and determine what's the right amount. And we looked at various parts of your operating budget. We looked at your capital needs, and we really tried to budget for each one of them going out 8 years. But the piece of the puzzle that didn't work out was the fact that the legislative action to the revenue limit law changed during that time.
And the valuation rates, things going up.
Exactly, exactly. So those are the things we have no way of projecting or control over, and that's what moved during these 8 years. But we look to your history and say, you know, we've got to continue
Yep. The
to
20, and
the 280 as an additional. We're talking about it being additional, but it's really just restoring what we had.
Right. Right. And so regardless of that, the needs that we have going forward, you know, of increasing the ability of our school to have things for STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, keeping our transportation fleet going, maintaining and upgrading our building, maintaining and retaining and attracting. We have an amazing staff now, but that goes. You have to look at the future as far as attracting new staff and salaries and benefits and everything. So that's what all that operating money will go into. And then there's also the other side of the coin that you have to look at, and I'll let Randall be the Grim Reaper here. But we do have to talk about, and it's fair to talk about that. What happens if we don't pass this referendum?
if the referendum doesn't pass, which means the 820 will go away because that was not, it's a non-recurring, so that will stop coming into us, which would be dramatic. We could hang on for a year, maybe with our fund balance, but of course that would come to an end too, and you could depend on short-term borrowing to try to piece things together for a short period of time. But eventually, it would have mainly come down to projects would not get done. I mean, we wouldn't be able to advance, the shop. We wouldn't be able to advance the bus barn. We wouldn't be able to buy equipment, buses. Just general maintenance stuff would also suffer on a daily need. We wouldn't be able to prioritize. We'd have to prioritize everything we do, minimize anything extra. Class sizes would most likely become larger because staffing would have to be looked at, especially in the elementary and middle school, because we do have some multiple classes in them areas where we could combine and shrink, but we really can't do that in the high school because you have one math teacher. And we have to teach math. We can't lose one math teacher.
Right. Right.
And it's just, it would really hamstring the ability of the district for the good of the kids. I mean, the kids would suffer dramatically for what this would do. And and we're all here for the kids. It's
Right.
that simple. The kids are always the first thing that we think about, and what's the best for them. And things change. Like I said, the shop program 6, 7, 8 years ago, we didn't even have a shop teacher. and we saw the priority and the need in the community and business for people that carpenters, mechanics, welders. I mean, and they don't need to have a 4-year degree.
Right.
And we found ourselves a great shop teacher who's invested into Monticello, owns a home in Monticello now. He's invested in us, so we want to keep investing in him. And the shop is very needed. I mean, it's not a frill. I mean, it's not. But in order to do the shop, we have to do something with the bus.
That's a really good point. A lot of people here, we're building a bus garage, but really the bus garage is
a
making
second thought.
space for our shop to expand and our
Yeah.
our tech ed area, which has changed very much. So
I mean, and that's the. I mean, could we do without the bus barn? It's a possibility, but we have a very good mechanic on site, and it saves us money by having our own maintenance and doing our own work. And we maintain our own fleet, which we hire local people to drive the buses. By having our own fleet, we have our own control of our buses, so we can do and go where we want and when we need to. Or you would lose that control if you had a bus company doing everything for you. So the bus thing is kind of a secondary thing to the shop project, because the shop program has grown so much over the years, from design factor to build. It's not just hammer nails anymore. It's and the kids have gone on and been very successful that have gone through the shop program. So
no, I think you're exactly right, Randall, in what you're saying about the importance of passing this. And not passing a referendum would have not only a huge effect on our school, but likely the community. And you mentioned earlier, this is for the kids.
The kids are very successful that come out of here. We're very proud of how the kids turn out and what we do here at Monticello. I mean, the culture, everything has changed so much over the years. And Monticello Schools is quite the central part of the Monticello community. And we're proud of what we do here, and proud of the community and how the kids interact. We have that Monticello Community Service Day, which is huge now. I mean, we try to interact with the community, the school, always doors open. I mean, we've changed over the years with our wellness center up here. It's open to the community, no charge. I mean, stuff like that would suffer if this wouldn't happen. But we've been well supported by the community. Community's been phenomenal to the school, and we thank them for that over the years.
Yeah, one of the hardest parts for a school board and administration to do is brag, and we have lots to brag about. So again, check out our website and the accomplishments and the history of our school report cards and how we exceed expectations, and our elementary significantly exceeds expectations. So please check that out, because it's hard for us to kind of tout ourselves, but we are very proud of what a Monticello diploma is, and that the experience that kids have here every day. Thank you. Well, I think in closing, just some high points are that our 2014 referendum is now coming to an end. The vote is on August 9th, so please vote. And we're putting some information on the screen right now that if you would like to come in and see the school, if you have any questions of Randall or school board members, if you just want to have a conversation about this, my information's on there. Please reach out, and should you have any other questions. And so we thank you for watching today.